Today we're going to be paying a Magic player on the internet to build me a budget modern deck. I was browsing the website Fiverr when I found out that you could pay people to build you a custom MTG deck. I was curious if they would actually build something playable, so I took the first decent one I could find and took their basic package and paid £4.59. Now, I asked it to be a modern deck, $300 budget, and specifically to build around Echo of Eons and Narset Parter of Veils. I believe that Echo of Eons is a heavily underplayed card in Modern because the flashback ability seems very powerful, but there isn't much support for it yet. So I wanted to test this player to see if they could come up with any creative ideas to try and make Echo of Eons work. In the deck theme, I specified that I want to focus on the flashback of Echo of Eons, most likely being in an artifact deck, as there's a lot of synergy between artifacts and Echo of Eons. You can see this in the Legacy format. And after that, I submitted my order. 5 hours after ordering, the seller messaged me asking me how competitive I would like the deck to be. As we're going to be playing with the deck in this video, I asked for it to be competitive enough to play on Magic Online. Then, 16 hours later, we got our deck. Now, looking at the deck, there are a lot of questions to be had. First is the mana. With this many colorless lands, it is going to be quite difficult to cast Counterspell on turn 2, and I think the sacrifice of these colorless lands is really not worth it. Sure, Citadel and Academy Ruins have quote-unquote artifact applications, but I don't really see what artifact in the deck you want to put back on top so urgently to play 2 copies. I also want to say that Counterspell is much worse than Metallic Rebuke in this style of deck, so I also don't understand that choice. Another big red flag for me is that we're only playing 2 cards with no bombs in the sideboard or even liquid metal coating, which is a must-have card in any Karn deck. I was also hoping to see at least an Emery in the deck to mill Echo of Eons, alongside something like Mox Ember or Mishra's Bauble to trigger Connive rather than Welding Jar. As it is a budget deck, I would expect to see at least Tormod's Crypt, as Welding Jar is quite narrow, but I can see the logic behind it as it does save the Urza constructs. What I do like about the deck though is we're playing Charter Course and Ledger Shredder to discard Echo of Eons, and it also does have an artifact part with artifacts that do see play in Modern. I think the mistakes in this deck are highlighted by the fact that they added in the deck tech message that they don't play Magic Online, and it seems like they tried to add another control aspect in the deck alongside the Narset, which was ultimately a mistake. Now, I could criticize this deck much more, but the best way to test a deck is by playing with it, so let's hop into some matches. Starting off our first round, we're on the play and we keep a decent double counterspell starting hand. We play our tap land, say go, and the opponent's on Tron. Now, our deck is not prepared at all to beat Tron. It turns out to be Eldrazi Tron, but that doesn't matter. They cast 2 must counter spells in game 1, I counter the Ugin, and they have Karn the Great Creator to win the game. They beat us up on game 1. In game 2, we're fortunate enough to draw the 1 Void Mirror from our sideboard, which makes their whole deck uncastable unless they can get an Urborg into play, and a Psy Master Thopterus makes them concede. But in game 3, again, it's Tron. It's very hard to beat with this style of deck. Going into the next match, our opponent reveals a Yorion, so they must be on some sort of grindy control deck. I keep a nice Urza Saga hand with a counterspell, top decking a Pithy Needle, which is great, so let's just land go. Our opponent fetches a Watery Grave, so I put them on Esper control. Are you kidding me? Tron again. Now this is actually a control build of Tron, so Urza Saga is very powerful as well as Karn the Great Creator, so we win game 1 swiftly by just activating Urza Saga and attacking. I also want to give a little rant here. Why would you play Yorion in Tron? You're looking to assemble Tron and you're diluting your deck. I'm so glad that this card is now banned in Modern to stop decks like this. In game 2, we actually managed to flashback Echo of Eons, but it wasn't even a correct play as I had double counterspell in hand. I just did it for fun, but it did actually help me draw a Karn and an Urza Saga, which kept the cards flowing, but that could have just potentially put them on Tron. Anyways, we crushed their deck as they were just a clunky slow Tron deck with 80 cards in their main. All we had to do is use the combat step. Something I want to highlight though is that in both of these matches, our deck has been really focused on Ledger Shredder, Counterspell, and Urza Saga, but I was able to discard the Echo of Eons to the Ledger Shredder in one of the games. Now, I actually want to showcase a game where our deck actually worked the way it's intended and planned to. So here, against a competitive Rakdos Scam deck, we keep a somewhat risky but good hand on the draw. Our opponent casts a turn 2 Kroxa, and we discard Brainstone as it's not useful in the matchup, and we follow up with a Ledger Shredder. I want to highlight here that this Rakdos Scam opponent has just cast a turn 2 Kroxa, turn 3 played a tap land and passed back. This is not a strong draw, so although our hand looks great, it's because our opponent has essentially done nothing. Anyways, we untap, we double spell, connive, and discard Echo of Eons. This finds us a basic island, so we can cast our third Soul Guide Lantern and get in for 2. Our opponent has the Terminate on the Ledger Shredder, and we pass back. They continued their slow draw with a Night's Whisper and a tap Blackleaf Cliffs, shipping the turn back, and because I'm scared of things like Lightning Bolt and Fury, I'm just going to play the Narset and pass the turn, because if we untap with it, we can Echo of Eons and most likely instantly win the game. Our opponent evokes Grief, tries to get it back from their graveyard, but we use Soul Guide Lantern, and they follow up with the Liliana of the Veil. Now, this means we're untapping with Echo of Eons. Let's do what our deck is intended to do. Now, we draw 7 cards, the opponent draws 1 because of Narset Parter of Veils. Now we can activate our Narset, we find a Pithing Needle, which gets rid of the Liliana, and the game just runs away from here. We can just start casting spells, and they can't do much because they are so low on resources. Now, I want to highlight something. Why did I win this game? Well, first off, the Rakdos Scam deck that only had Kroxa on turn 2, that's a very slow draw. I also want to say it's lucky that we top decked the Echo of Eons, they didn't have a removal spell for the Narset, as well as they basically didn't disrupt our hand. A lot of things had to go right here for us to win, and we did manage to punish the opponent for having a slow draw, which fair play is good for the deck. However, in Game 2, we had to mulligan 2 no-land opening hands, putting us on 5 cards against the discard deck. It doesn't help even more that on the play, they had the Scam combo, which wiped our hand and put us in top deck mode, essentially losing us the game on turn 1. They followed this up with a turn 2 Dothri Voidwalker, which is too powerful for us as we're low on removal in the deck, and we can't even block it now. In Game 3, we had a decent opening hand, but they still had the turn 1 Scam again. They had the Dothri Voidwalker to follow it up with, and we just lost to the beatdown plan. Overall, do I think that this deck is playable? Not this exact configuration, but I do want to give props to the Ledger Shredder, Charter Course synergies in the deck. I did like the ideas behind it. I think that the mana base needs to be changed, like I said at the start. I also think that it would be more competitive if you just removed the Karns from the deck, added Emeries, really focused on the Echo of Eons package, and made the deck lower curved, because I found the deck not having access to a lot of mana. I also didn't like 4 Counterspell, as I want to see something more like Metallic Rebuke if you want to focus on a more greedy mana base with Darksteel Citadel, really focusing on the Urza constructs. I also really enjoyed Urza in the deck. I want 4 copies of those because they won me a lot of games. I do just want to say at the end of this video, I don't think that I'm the target audience for this Fiverr project. If I was a casual modern player, this would be perfect for me to bring to an LGS, as there are deeper lines in the deck than just the combat step, as well as drawing cards. I also want to say that building a Magic deck in 16 hours on your own, with no resources from Magic Online experience, is a hard task, so props to the creator for that as well. Ultimately, I was impressed by some of the ideas in the deck. To finish off this video though, if you did enjoy this content, then please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys soon for another video.